Small things don't feel like they're working. That's exactly why they do. We tend to trust what we can measure, the dramatic shift, the visible result, the before and after. But most of what shapes a life happens below that threshold. It accumulates the way sediment does, quietly, without announcing itself, until one day the riverbed has changed, and you're not entirely sure when it happened. The Japanese have long understood this, not as a philosophy they argue about, but as a way they move through ordinary days. What follows isn't a system, it's closer to a collection of small forms, ways of beginning, ways of paying attention, ways of closing, that, taken together, create a kind of interior architecture, quiet, load-bearing. There is something in the way a day begins that determines more than we think. The concept of ichiko ichie, this moment, once, never again, is often applied to grand encounters. But its quieter application is in how you start a morning. Not dramatically, simply the same way each time. The same small sequence. Water before anything else, a breath, a moment of stillness before the phone or the task or the noise arrives. When the beginning is consistent, it doesn't require willpower. It becomes the door through which you enter the day. And after enough days, you stop noticing the door. You simply find yourself already inside. And once inside, there's the question of what you carry with you. The practice of danshari, the discipline of releasing what no longer serves, is often understood as a weekend project, a clearing of closets. But in its smallest form, it's one object per week, not a purge, just one thing, a drawer you've been avoiding, a shirt you keep moving to the back, a cable for a device you no longer own. The removal itself is minor, but what it trains is something more important. The habit of asking, regularly, whether what surrounds you still belongs to your life. Small subtractions, repeated, clear the visual field. And a clear field is quieter. Quieter is easier to think in. There is a middle territory in each day where attention either sharpens or diffuses. What you eat and how you eat it belongs to this territory more than most people realize. Hara Hachibu is the Okinawan practice of stopping at 80% full, not stuffed, not satisfied in the way that requires recovery. But the subtler instruction inside that practice is the one about attention. Eating without a screen, without a conversation that demands something from you, without splitting yourself between the food and something else. One thing at a time. This is not ascetic, it's practical. The meal, eaten without division, actually registers. You taste it, you notice when you're full. You return to work or to the afternoon, without the mild fog that follows eating past the point of need. This quality of presence, being where you are fully, is also what makes the daily walk do its work, not the steps or the distance. In Japan, the morning walk tradition is less about exercise than about exposure to outside air, to natural light, to the temperature of the actual day. 10 minutes, enough to feel the weather on your skin. What this does, neurologically and emotionally, is reset something that indoor living and screen light quietly deranges. The body remembers it has an outside. The nervous system briefly unclenches. The day that follows is different in ways that are real but hard to attribute to a 15-minute walk, which is precisely why most people stop doing it. Closing well is as important as beginning well, and here the practices are perhaps the most quietly radical. Before a difficult task, a hard conversation, a piece of work that requires real thought, a decision that matters, there is the practice of mokuso, 2 minutes of sitting silence. Not meditation in any formal sense, just stopping, hands still, eyes down or closed, letting whatever noise preceded the moment settle before you bring yourself to what needs your full capacity. 2 minutes is nothing. 2 minutes of genuine stillness before something difficult, practiced daily, changes what you bring to difficulty. It is not about calm for its own sake, it's about arriving without the residue of everything that came before. Then there is the writing, not journaling in the expressive sense, not the processing of emotion or the cataloguing of events. The practice is closer to haiku mind, one observation per day, written precisely, not today was hard, something more specific, the particular quality of light through a window, the expression on a colleague's face before they spoke, the way a decision felt different from the outside than it did from the inside. One thing, true, exact. This trains perception in a way that nothing else quite does, because it requires you to notice something worth noticing, which means moving through the day with slightly more attention, slightly more of yourself present, in case today contains something worth writing down. It almost always does. And at the end, the closing form. In Japanese martial arts and in many traditional practices, there is a final gesture that marks completion, a bow, a specific movement, a brief acknowledgement that this thing is now finished and the practitioner is now leaving it. Applied to ordinary life, it can be as simple as this: the same small action every night before sleep, turning off a particular light, writing 3 words in a notebook, placing your shoes parallel to each other at the door. The content matters less than the consistency. What you are training is the capacity to close, to actually end the day, rather than letting it dissolve into unconsciousness. A day that ends deliberately leaves something different behind than one that simply stops. What these practices share is not difficulty. None of them require transformation. None of them demand a version of yourself you haven't yet become. They are calibrated for the person you already are, on the ordinary days you already have. Their power comes not from intensity, but from repetition, the slow accumulation of small, correct things, compounding beneath the threshold of notice. This is why large changes so often fail. They require a different version of you than the one who has to show up on Tuesday morning, slightly tired, slightly distracted, with an ordinary day ahead. Small forms ask only for the person who is already there. You won't remember all 8. You don't need to. One taken seriously is worth more than 8 admired.